First Samuel chapter 17, otherwise known as the David and Goliath story. Now, it is very tempting to roll your eyes when you hear David and Goliath, because, like my daughter, you might say, well, I already know this story. What is there to learn? But I'll tell you, those of you who've been believers for a while and who've been reading your Bible daily, and when you undoubtedly come across the same passage a few times during your studies, I am sure you will be able to say, oftentimes you would notice that, wait a minute, I've been reading this thing for years and oh, I didn't know this was here. Or, oh, I didn't know this verse, this truth meant that to me that way and applied to my life, to my understanding. So, needless to say, Word of God is deep, and God speaks to us in, I would say, in progressive ways. He gets deeper and deeper and deeper with us as the time goes. Now, what I'm thinking about is, should I reading the whole chapter would take a long time. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to highlight the chapter. You guys already know the story. I'm sure everybody knows the story. But I'm just going to highlight the chapter first, just go through it as though we're just giving you a summary. And then we're going to look at the lessons that we learned from it, the practical lessons and spiritual lessons that we can glean out of it. I don't know why the Lord put this passage in my heart last week to prepare and study, but somebody needs to hear it. So here it is. First Samuel chapter 17. Now, this is from the time of Samuel the prophet. He was the last of the judges that ruled Israel, and after him, the period of kings began. Now, this is during his time. Philistines gathered their armies and they waged war against Israel. And what happened was they came to a place called the Valley of Elah. It's got the valley is in the middle of two hills. They call it mountains, but they're not really like huge mountains as we understand mountains. Basically, we would call them hills. So on one hill you have Israel soldiers, on the other hill you have Philistine soldiers. So King Saul is the king of Israel at the time. And King Saul and Israelites set up camp opposite sides of the valley every morning and evening, twice a day, for 40 days. A Philistine champion named Goliath came forward to challenge Israelites. Once in the morning, once at night, this massive person would walk into the valley, and with a booming voice coming out of this over 9 feet tall body, wearing heavy bronze armor and carrying these huge spears and stuff, he would say, choose one man to fight me. If he kills me, we will be your servants. But if I kill him, you will serve us. Send someone out to fight me. Basically, he's saying they're offering the Philistines, hey, no need for all that bloodshed for thousands of people to die. Let's just settle this man to man. Just one person from each country, and whoever wins the war. When Israel and Saul hear these words, they were terrified and frozen in fear. Right. And At the time, David was a young man. He was a shepherd. He was the youngest of the eight brothers. His father's name was Jesse. They were from Bethlehem. And three of his older brothers were in the army. So one day his dad sent David to the battlefield to check on his brothers and bring them food. While David was there, Goliath stepped forward again, his usual challenge, and David heard the giant's defiant words and saw how the Israelites were running away in fear. He asked, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that should defy the armies of the living God?" David was deeply stirred and volunteered to fight Goliath. I want you to notice what David was offended at. He was offended that this person was defying the armies of God. When Saul heard this, he tried to discourage David, saying, "You're just a boy. He's been a warrior since his youth." But David said, "No." He said, "I've been taking care of my father's sheep. When a lion or bear attacked, I chased it down, struck it, and rescued the lamb. The Lord who delivered me," very important point, the emphasis on the Lord who delivered me, "from the lion and the bear, will deliver me from the Philistine." Saul agreed and tried to put on his own royal armor on David, the bronze helmet, the coat of armor, and the sword. But David couldn't even move. He was just, it was like a caricature. He took it all off and said, "I can't fight in these." Instead, David picked up his shepherd's staff, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in his bag, and went out with only his sling. As David approached, Goliath looked at him with contempt. "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" He mocked and cursed David by his gods and shouted, "Come here! I will feed your flesh to the birds and to the wild animals." It's an ancient way of saying, "I'm gonna kill you. Come here." Okay. And David answered, "You come to me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty and God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. The battle is the Lord's." And David ran straight towards the Philistine. He reached into his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck Goliath right in the forehead. The stone sank deep. The giant fell face down. David ran forward, took Goliath's own sword, and cut off his head. Then Philistines saw that their champion was dead. They panicked and fled. The Israelites chased them, shouting in victory. David took Goliath's head to Jerusalem. It's a little gruesome, but I guess that's what they did. They didn't have phones to take pictures with, so they took the head. They kept the giant's weapons. And later on, many years later, when David is on the run, he's gonna pick up those weapons from the and he's running away from Saul. From that day, Saul kept David with him, and the people began to admire the young shepherd who had defeated the giant with faith and courage. So, in a nutshell, this is the story of David and Goliath. Um, let's look at what we can get from it. David rejects Saul's heavy armor because it did not and fit him and felt unnatural. Use what you have, what you already have, and what you know. Instead, he used the shepherd's slings and stones, tools that he had mastered while protecting sheep from the lions and the bears. The lesson for us: leverage your unique experience, what God has taught you, your skills, your resources, rather than copying someone else's methods, his ways, or waiting for the perfect weapon, the perfect equipment, etc. If God has called you to a battle, He has equipped you for it. Remember, we all have giants in our lives that need to be slain. We all have giants in our lives that we need to battle against. They take different shapes and forms, and they come at us from different angles, and sometimes they're physical, sometimes, most of the time, they're psychological and emotional. It's relational, it's health related, money related, people related, circumstance related. It comes from all different angles. One thing, well, one of the things we have in common is we all have giants that we need to fight against. So this story of David versus Goliath is not only a story of one shepherd boy versus a soldier, a warrior going back thousands of years. This story is a template that we live in our daily lives every day. We have Goliaths that we must fight against. So this is why I wanted to look at this story. You all have things you're fighting against. We all have, I do too. We have giants, sometimes in front of which we feel powerless. We are like the Israelites and Saul, like we feel afraid, we're paralyzed, we're frozen. Like they were frozen in place. This guy comes up there twice a day for 40 days. There's a huge army. Not one can say anything. Fear paralyzes you. Who can attest to that? I can. We all have things we got to fight against. So, lesson number one: don't try to copy other people. Don't look for other people's methods. Just be and use what God has given you, and be the person God has made you. And the next point is kind of related to that. How do you become that person? Preparation in private leads to victory in public. What do I mean? David's confidence was not because he was arrogant and egotistical. It came from years of facing real threats alone. There was no bystanders. Nobody else saw what was happening. It was him, sheep, and the dangerous animal. He had already killed predators with his sling. So the takeaway for us is build competence and resilience in small, unseen, daily battles, habits, skills, character. So you're ready when the giant appears. How do we get skilled at something? Well, you guys all know the cliche. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, 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 right? That's the way it works. So it's the same with fighting giants. How do you get ready for the battle? You practice in little things. You practice in our daily lives. There are these small issues that come against us. We must defeat them in a way that is obedient to the Lord, and be the person who He wants us to be, and make the decisions in accordance with His will. So get ready in private. Next lesson is face giants directly. David didn't wait for the army to act. He moved forward that, and he ran toward Goliath, it says. You see, there was no hesitation. There was no being frozen in fear. Once he knew what he had to do, there was no stopping him. And the picture in my mind is one of absolute surrender. 100% without holding anything back, holding all of himself into the endeavor. Incidentally, guys, if we want to excel in any field or we want to be successful in anything, that's what we have to do. We have to just embrace it and just go all in. You see, the Israelite army was playing it safe, staying behind the shields and behind the rocks and behind other. David went straight in. No holding him back. He just ran. He was focused. He knew what he had to do, and everything was on the line. Because once you know what the Lord is telling you to do, there should be no holding us back. Go all in 100%. Don't hold back. Give it everything you have. But if you don't know what the Lord is wanting you to do, you wait. Okay? Don't move forward, even in a cautious way. Wait. But once you do, move forward. And that's what he did. He acted decisively. Another lesson is once you hear from the Lord and know what he wants you to do, ignore the naysayers and the critics. David's own brothers accused him of arrogance, and Saul doubted him because he was a youth. David stayed focused on the mission, and the real world application for us is expect discouragement from people who see only the difficulties. They only see the odds. But I must bring the same thing again and highlight it. This happens after we know God's will in this situation. Make sure you're not ignoring naysayers and critics because it's a personal thing for you. Okay? Make sure you're ignoring them because it goes against what the Lord is telling you and you're sure of it. You understand the difference? Momentum and precision beat brute force. Well, you could definitely see that in this picture. One accurate shot to the forehead dropped the giant. Right? Overwhelming size and armor couldn't compensate for the vulnerability. Practical parallel in business, conflict, or personal goals. Targeted effort in the right place often outperforms raw power and resources. So he was decisive, he was precise, and that's it. The most important lesson to learn, where I'm concerned from the story, David's famous line, "You come against me with a sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." The battle belongs to the Lord. That's the biggest lesson we must learn. Victory comes from trusting God's power more than human strength. This echoes broadly in the Bible. I mean, we see it in the Old Testament and New over and over, a very clear verse that captures this, and also Zechariah 4:6 that reads, "Not by might nor by power, but my spirit, says the Lord." Jesus in the New Testament, he said, if you abide in me, and I in you, ask for anything from me. Says, it belongs to the Lord. The battle is the Lord's. Do you think the way David took down this giant was his skill? Or do you think God might have had something to do with the trajectory of that song? I would say I think he would. God delights in using unlikely and weak people. David was a teenager, the youngest son, a shepherd, which is like a low status job. God often chooses the foolish and the insignificant to display his glory. You could read about this in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. Apostle Paul talks about this. He humbles the proud and encourages the overlooked. Another lesson is faith is active. It's not passive. David didn't just pray. He acted with bold confidence, rooted in the past faithfulness of God, the Lord who has rescued me from the paw of the lion, he said. True faith combines trust with obedience and courage. We cannot forget obedience. Obedience is everything. If you're not obeying the Lord and living the way he wants us to live and making the decisions that he wants us to make, it's not going to work. We have to be living in an obedient mindset, a lifestyle. That's part of being abide in me. Intimidation is a weapon of the enemy. Goliath used psychological warfare for 40 days, taunting, boasting, instilling fear in the whole army. Spiritual takeaway, many giants, addictions, fears, obstacles, and other issues rely on intimidation more than the actual unbeatable strength. Standing on God's promises breaks that hold. So what does that mean? When you're facing a giant and you're afraid of something, and that thing that you're afraid of gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and by default, you get smaller and smaller and smaller, meaning as your problem grows, you feel less and less and powerful. And the less powerful you feel, more paralyzed you become, more intimidated you become, more fearful you become. You freeze in fear. The way to get out of it is to stand on God's promises. It sounds simplistic. It's true. When you're paralyzed in fear, you have two choices. You're either going to fight or you're going to run away, fight or flight, right? It's a battle, we fight. Now, how do we fight? Not with weapons, not with this and that, not with our hands. We hold on to God's promise. Because you have fear coming at you and trying to freeze you and making sure that you don't move ahead, or you don't make the decisions you have to, or you don't go in the way that the Lord wants you to go. That's the purpose of the enemy. But our way out, our guiding light is God's promise. You're going to refuse that fear, trusting on what God has promised you, looking back on what God has done in your life in the past. You're going to say, no, this is not going to happen. Because God says this, that, and that. You feel alone in a fight, a spiritual thing, battle you're going through, and you don't think anybody can help you, and you're about to give up or give in. Remember, God said, I will never leave you. I will never desert you. Now you have two choices. You're either going to hold on to that promise and take comfort and courage in the promise of the Lord, saying that, no, yeah, I don't see him physically next to me, but I know the Lord is with me. We hold on to that promise and get out of that mess, or we just get smaller and smaller under that weight. We hold on to God's promise, and that's the way out from intimidation. Basically, you're changing fear with hope in your mind, in your brain. That's what's happening. If you get stuck in fear, you can't go anywhere. You need hope to get out of it. And God gave us the answers. This is what we need. He knows we're going to get stuck. We're going to be fearful. But he wants us to know that no, by trusting in his promise, we can get out of that darkness. And one victory can shift the entire situation. One person down, the whole war is won and the whole landscape has changed. And as a result of this war, they ended up adding more land to their country, etc. And David's act turned the tide for Israel. And the way we can apply it personally is your faithfulness in one area can encourage or liberate others. When you go through something and you come out of it victoriously, well, for you personally, you can remember that in the future to get out of other situations, knowing how faithful God was. Second, you can help others to get out of a similar situation. That happens a lot. All right. Well, these are some of the points I wanted us to look at from the story of David and Goliath. Let's, if you have any questions or comments, let's talk a little bit